What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more PGA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel. This time for the Cognizant Classic down in Palm Beach Gardens in Florida, starting the Florida swing. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. Now I'm joined by our PGA DFS analyst Niromada. Niro, welcome back once again. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. How you doing?
Well, good. Excited for another week of PGA. Get to tackle the bear trap this week, which you'll hear on the broadcast 500 times, maybe somewhere around there over the 4 days, depending on how much you watch.
Exactly. At least 500 times. So the Cognizant Classic, in this video, we will talk about the top plays in our statistical model for that event. First, though, we will review last week. We've been super locked into PGA DFS so far this year. We'll review our hits and misses from last week and how you can use that information to make your picks and your lineups for this week. So don't miss that. Then we will talk about which players we expect to be more popular than expected in high stakes and smaller GPPs on both DraftKings and FanDuel. We'll talk about some early line movers in the markets. These moves have been fantastic all year. We'll see what it's telling us here on Tuesday afternoon. And then we'll close out the show with a very specific showdown and weather note that could be useful to all of your lineups this week. So stick around to the very end for that. We've been trying to get to 2,000 views per video for PGA. We're slowly getting there. And I think we can, with your help. How you can do that, just subscribe to the video if you like it, give us a thumbs up, drop a comment, whether it's a question or a prediction, and watch the video all the way through to the end. We appreciate you. So, Nero, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too hard because the second we do that, everything will come crashing down. But it does feel like we've been laser focused in our PGA content this year. We've done great jobs before, but I think you and I doing this video together, we've really been able to lock it down so far this year. And it's been a great 6 weeks to start the season.
It really has. Now, I personally have not experienced as much success as the members have or as you have. Um, One thing I'll say there is, as a DFS player, you always need to be able to review your own process, what you're doing, and the more aware you can be of your own shortcomings as a player, the better off you're going to be. As Brian well knows, and he's going to smile here in a second, I have tendencies to get too attached to particular golfers who I am very high on their career ceiling or that kind of thing, and that will get me on the weeks where they're not doing well, where I would have been better served to just follow the information in front of my face, the stuff that's in the model, the stuff that I've written up, the trifecta plays, like all that kind of stuff. If you've been following that stuff for these 6 or so weeks of the PGA Tour season so far, you've been successful. Like no two ways about it.
And last week was no different. We were all over the top 10 at the Mexico Open with the picks in your plug that you wrote up, the Occupy model, and particularly the trifecta plays. I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots really quickly, guys, from last week. This was a round four showdown win for me in a small field GPP. We saw actually quite a few screenshots from members throughout the week in Discord for our showdown contest. Our showdown model has been fantastic to start and through February, so make sure you check that out in addition to the 4-round classic slates. And then we got a great member screenshot here, Nero. Turned $20 into $5,200. And this may be the smartest person on the planet, smarter than you and I combined, because what they do, they just played 5 trifecta plays and a top 2 play in the model, and they won $5,200.
The ultimate kiss, just keep it simple, stupid methodology. Like it's good. I would say if you're pressed for time, just if you did nothing else other than you're using the stuff from the model and you're like, oh, I'm just going to get over the field on the 5 trifecta plays or the 3 or the 6 or the 4, however many there are that week, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. And I like to do the research and the deep dives and all the other things that go along with it, but the ability is there for you if you're pressed for time to just do something simple like that. And you do that once. I mean, this person has already paid for the membership, they've paid for their entry fees for the season, they've done everything in 1 week.
And their summer vacation, more than likely. So
Yeah. Yes.
if we look at the trifecta plays last week, and if you're new to the videos or you're new to Occupy Fantasy, you're like, what the hell are trifecta plays? These are plays. We monitor the betting markets every single week, and we know that there are 3, sometimes 4 really sharp sports books when it comes to golf action in particular. And what Nero and I do, we track the opening odds for all of the golfers all the way until the tournament starts Thursday morning. And around Wednesday evening, we tell you which golfers have seen their odds to win improve at every single sports book. And this is a good measure of success because it lets us know that sharp money somewhere is betting these guys to win. And if that's the case, we should be putting these guys in our DFS lineups as well. Nero, last week, let's run it down. Potgieter, second. Aaron Rye, fourth. Ben Griffin, fourth. Steven Yeager, sixth. Nikolai Horgard, eighth. Even the cheap guys, Hayden Springer and Ricky Castillo, made the cut, which helped you get 6 out of 6. Only 2 missed cuts, Carson Young and Rico Hoey. I mean, 6 out of the top 9 or 7 out of the top 9 making the cut. 6 of the top 9 of the trifecta plays, 6 of the 9 in the top 10 is pretty insane.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it really is. Now sometimes you can't fit them all due to salary constraints or similar in a given week. This particular week, you just happen to be able to fit them into lineups, in clumps, or as the one member did, like all five plus Smalley from the model. Um, and on weeks like that type of performance, like you should just absolutely crush. And I was very disappointed on Sunday night that I did not, because again, the answers to the test were all right there in front of me.
7 of the top 10 in our model made the cut last week. A few top 10s, a couple top 20s. And you wrote up Potgieter in the plug, Nero. So the only thing I am sad about is I did not put Potgieter on the cover of the plug. Granted, he didn't win, but maybe he would have if I did put him on the cover.
Yeah, potentially, maybe that Brian Campbell out of bounds ball on the second playoff hole would have actually gone out of bounds instead of getting pushed back into the rough there, and Potgieter would have won.
All right.
Hey, but Nikolai made a run there on Sunday. I
He
thought
did.
maybe he was going to get there again. I was like, oh my God, Brian did it again.
uh, so for those of you who haven't been following, the cover boy in the Daily Plug has won 2 of the last 3 events. Cover boy of the videos here has made the cut every single time. Let's see if we can continue this week. For those who are wondering, that's Brian Harmon that was on the cover this week. We'll see if we keep moving. So Nero, let's look forward to the Cognizant Classic this week. I'm gonna give you, the viewers, 8 or 9 names at the top of our Occupy model. We look at historical data, what's important for each particular course. It's going to change every single week. And we spit out the best data driven plays for this event. 2 guys at the top that are also top of the salary board, which is pretty interesting, Nero. Shane Lowry, Russell Henley.
Yeah, for the record, you don't usually see that, or we don't always see that, is the better way to say it, from the model. At those two sitting at the top, but you've got 2 players that are, accomplishment wise, separated from the rest of the field. They have very good, course history here. And someone like Lowry, usually we have difficult scoring conditions here. Shane is one of the top players for difficult scoring conditions. Now, it has been a little bit easier. They changed one of the par fours to a par five. They've been cutting the rough down. So the scoring here has gotten easier over the last 2 years, but it's still pretty difficult. And both Lowry and Henley rank very well in those metrics.
Number 3 in the model is your who the hell is this? Why is he so high play of the week from the model? But I will point out that every single time we've had a guy like this in the model, they've made the cut. You look at Chan Kim and Scott Piercy last week. Scott Piercy was 1% owned. We sat on the show and said, why is he even in this event? Made the cut for us, and even was in a members winning round 4 screenshot. So shout out Scott Piercy. This week it's Ben Martin, and I have a note about Ben Martin, but I want to get your take on him first, Nero.
Well, he was fifth here 2 years ago, so he's played here 5 times. He's made the cut 4 times. Given how difficult this course is, that means something. He's also someone that ranks very highly, with Lowry in the top 3 scoring in this field for difficult scoring conditions.
And I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Doug Gim. And for those who have played players in the past, and maybe you probably haven't played Ben Martin out there, but guys who lose strokes putting, and you're like, I'm never playing that guy again. He couldn't putt to save his life. We know putting is so volatile. Ben Martin gets the tag in our model this week for he's expected to see some positive putting regression to the mean in his favor. And we actually switched putting surfaces this week, Nero. We're now back on Bermuda. Ben Martin, by the way, is a top 20 putter on Bermuda historically. And I think when you marry those two together, that's why he ranks so highly in the model. And we can actually tell a story on how he reverts or regresses to his putting mean, his long-term putting mean, now that he's back on surfaces that he's comfortable with.
100%. Yeah, this is the week where I tend to transition from my subjective stuff, where I'm looking at a lot of players who grew up on the West Coast or grew up on POA surfaces, to I start all of a sudden I notice in these this week I'm like, wow, I have all guys from like the Southeast. Like they grew up in Florida, they went to school at Georgia, they went to school in Florida, they whatever, but like it's not so much the geographic region, it's the grass. It's the grass that they're used to playing on. The next person on the list, by the way, Brian Harmon, another who's a standout Bermuda putter. Now he's got other things in his favor. He's up at the top in difficult scoring. He's good off the tee. This is the type of course where you don't need to be a bomber, but you can't spray it. So like if you're actually like somewhere in the middle where you're like, I'm not super long and I'm not like the most accurate like Brian Campbell last week, but I'm pretty accurate. Pretty good week for you, and that sets up Brian Harmon very well from that perspective.
So that rounds out the top four: Ben Martin and Brian Harmon. Next, the next three guys in the model that will give you: Michael Kim, Davis Thompson, and Tom Hoagie. Variety of different skill sets here, Nero. What stands out to you about each of these three players and why they may rank so highly in the model this week?
Yeah, for Kim and Hoagie, it's approach play. So both in the top 10 on approach in this field. Davis Thompson, a little bit more of the tee game. So off the tee, top 10 in this field. And again, he fits the mold. Like he's long, but he's not ridiculously long. And he's mostly straight without being like the straightest driver in the world. Because again, when you're the straightest driver in the world, you're losing a little bit of distance, and that will get you a little bit here, but you don't need to bomb it, and you certainly don't need to spray it because spraying it here, there's so much water on this course. So I'll say it this way: the misses here penalized heavier than they are on other courses that they play throughout the year.
Compare that to last week, where big misses were rarely penalized
Correct.
and even,
Yes.
if not encouraged, hence Brian Campbell's bounce back off the trees. So
Yes.
uh, those are the top plays in our model for this week. Use those guys liberally in your lineups. We'll continue to adjust our projected ownership for these guys all the way through Thursday morning. So make sure you check out our Occupy model at Occupy Fantasy for that. Next, as we do every week on this show, for those of you playing high stakes GPPs or smaller GPPs where pros can still play, $3 or more on FanDuel, above $3 on DraftKings. These next groups of players will be much higher owned than our projected or any projected ownership indicates, because there's a certain set of industry projections that pushes these guys heavily, not these specific players, but this projection set pushes guys heavily every single week. And by knowing this, if you're not a sharp player and you're not playing against these guys, you can just play these guys because they're normally pretty good plays. But if you're playing in these contests with these pros, know that you can either get some leverage away from these guys or lean into them and get different elsewhere. Knowing who these players are extremely important if you're playing in any sort of contest that has pros in it. Nero, which players this week are going to be higher owned by sharp PGA DFS players?
Yeah, when I look across the two lists for we have a list for DraftKings and a list for FanDuel. So there's three that cross over and are on both: Taylor Moore, Kurt Kitayama, and Taylor Pendrith. On DraftKings, the other three that go with those three: Ben Griffin, Alex Smalley, Harry Hall. Pretty sure all of those names should be familiar if you've been playing for the last few weeks. These players have all either caught steam, finished well, projected well somewhere along the way, and it's kind of just an extension of that. When you go to FanDuel again, start with your Taylor Moore, Kitayama, Pendrith, and then add Joe Highsmith, and then our two at the top, Shane Lowry and Russell Henley. Again, as we've talked about, I don't know if we've talked about too much in the videos. I mentioned in the plug sometimes, and I know we've talked about it in past videos. You know, it is a little bit easier to get up to the top of the salary ranges on FanDuel. You don't have to, I'll say it this way, it doesn't feel like you have to go down so low in the scrub range to get those guys. So, you know, they're almost always going to be more popular on FanDuel compared to DraftKings, and especially in a week like this where players like Lowry and Henley, they're just safer than everybody else because of their career ceilings and their floors are higher. You know, people will just take that certainty on FanDuel because they don't feel like they have to pay for it as much as they have to pay for it when they take it on DraftKings.
Absolutely. That's a really good summary of those of you who are playing on FanDuel. And there are quite a few. We get some questions from time to time. Nero's like, who the hell still plays on FanDuel? Surprisingly, a good amount of people still play on FanDuel, which is why we do this for the people in these videos. So, all right. You mentioned ownership, and I talked about ownership for a second. We're still in the very early stages of ownership for this week, as we are every single Tuesday. And so it's too early to know which guys are going to be too popular for us to play in some contests, which guys we want to get away from, which guys are just owned enough that we can play in all of our contests. So make sure you check out our Occupy model throughout the week for the projected ownership for the high stakes and the largest GPPs on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Now, last week at this time, we didn't have any trifecta plays as of Tuesday. They all poured in on Wednesday. This week, Nero, we have two guys who have seen their odds to move at all of the sharp sports books so far. And I got to say, they don't appear to be very data driven picks based on, at least on what I'm looking at in our model, which always raises an eyebrow as to who knows something about these two guys. Who are they and what are you seeing?
Yeah, the two players are Bo Hostler and Seamus Power. Now, Seamus Power would make a little bit more sense to me. Coastal, windy player, given his heritage, has played well in those types of events in the past. Very good iron player, which is something that's very necessary here. Hostler, good Bermuda putter, actually. So maybe that's what it is. Actually, I wrote up Hostler last week. He was not great. But, no problem coming back on him again because he's, again, outside of last week, before that, he'd been playing pretty well. So we also have a list of the players that have moved in two of the books, but not three. So these are the ones we kind of keep an eye on. That list is pretty long. So you got Adam Schenk, Doug Gim, Christian Bezadenhout, Andrew Novak, Keith Mitchell, Russell Henley, Brian Harmon, Ben On, and Sung J M. So, check back to the plug, the Wednesday update, and then if you're in the Discord, finally Wednesday night, we kind of give the trifecta move updates as we go along, and Brian will always stick the kind of quote unquote final trifecta moves in the Discord channel on Wednesday night. So be on the lookout.
So, for those of you watching, just take a pause, rewind back 15 seconds, write down
Yeah,
the list of those
exactly.
names for those guys that got two moves, and keep an eye on them for the next couple of days in the betting markets. If you don't have access to Occupy Fantasy, we don't expect everyone to subscribe to Occupy Fantasy, nor should you. But if you want the actual data, you want the moves, you want Nero's picks, you want the model, you want the trifecta, all the as Nero likes to say, ingredients that go into the soup for PGA DFS that we provide here at Occupy Fantasy. And it's very different than every other site. We have a very different approach, and it's very successful. You can get those trifecta plays here. Two thoughts, Nero, just on the trifecta and the market moves so far for me. Bo Hostler is pretty interesting. And I think, like, as a game theory player, right, is like the best type of play to make. You figure last week he was $9,300 in a weaker field and what, 14, 15% owned. Now he's $7,300 and 5% owned as of Tuesday afternoon. I mean, you can't ask for a much bigger overcorrection and overreaction. And then we get the market moves behind him. It's like, yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I it'll take a little bit of extra courage because I have to get back over the field again on him after I was, significantly over last week. But he is, as you said, he's the perfect type of play. These guys are human. I'm sure he expected to play well last week. Sure, maybe you're going to get 5% extra focus from him this week, and then you add in all the other stuff on top of it, and he just makes a great tournament play.
And
It's
then
exactly the kind of thing we're looking for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And then from the guys you listed that have moved at two books so far, any particular names stand out there outside of Brian Harmon, who we talked about, top five in the model, is the cover boy of the YouTube video. Any of these other guys stand out for one reason or the other?
I mean, Keith Mitchell would stand out because you're coming back to a preferred surface, back into his area of the world. I mean, Henley's sitting at the top of the model. Again, another guy. He went to Georgia, Bermuda. This is his area. Like, this is the type of place where he excels and does well. Um, I think the other one for me would be Ben On, who has not really played well so far this year, but is a very good course fit for PGA National. Like, just an absolute ball striking machine. Theoretically, should be able to keep it out of all of the hazards and all of the places where you don't want to be on this golf course. So yeah, he's definitely someone I'll be keeping an eye on in the market until lock.
For sure. So you heard it here. Ben On, Henley, Mitchell. Let's watch these guys in the markets over the next 36 hours. Finally, we will close it out with a showdown and or weather note. And Nero, it's been 6 weeks or more since we've had a maybe, and I don't want to definitively put it on yet, a wind advantage or a weather wave advantage. Talk to me about what you're seeing. First of all, let's talk about what you're seeing first, and then we can talk about the strategy for it.
Yeah, now I had it in my notes originally as seeing a potential advantage for the Thursday PM, Friday AM. When I looked just right before we started recording, I'm actually seeing it a little bit the opposite, where I'm seeing a potential advantage for the Thursday morning, Friday PM crew. Looks at the moment like the wind might be higher Thursday afternoon and Friday morning than it would be Thursday morning and Friday afternoon. Number one, that speaks to like you need to stay on top of these things right up until lock because wind forecasts are notoriously fickle, especially as you get very close to the coast. And we'll be very close to the coast this week. Um, and so you need to be able to shift and move on that. But I think more than anything, it would tell me this week has a very high likelihood for having some small amount of a wave advantage one way or the other. So I will be keeping, I mean, again, if you're an Occupy member, you're reading the plug, you're in the Wednesday update, Discord channel stuff, it'll all be in there. But if you're not, this would be something I want to be checking Wednesday night when I'm building, and then again, assuming I'm awake before lock, Thursday morning before lock to see if the forecast, whatever I was planning on, was holding.
So a couple thoughts here. One, this course in particular, it's not super coastal, right? It's not like right on the coast, but there aren't a lot of
Correct.
trees here correctly, right? So like that's
Yep.
why wind should impact play a little more. And if you look at scoring year to year, it's drastically changes based on the wind forecast.
Correct. Yes. And also anytime you have a course like this where there's a lot of water and a lot of hazards and therefore a lot of big numbers, the wind just multiplies the shots that are offline. And again, because you're paying such a stiff penalty here when you hit it offline compared to other courses that they will play throughout the year, like the wind just matters so much more than it would at other locations.
And now, if we use that information, let's talk showdown first. And you're playing round one showdown, and you see that it's 5 to 6 miles in the morning, 10 to 12 in the afternoon. Doesn't seem like a lot, but pretty significant. I think that would be worthy of playing all six guys in the morning than most of your lineups, right?
I mean, for me, yes, again, it depends. Are you more of an optimal type of DFS player? Are you more of an exploitative type of DFS player? I tend to be a little bit more on the exploitative side, so I will overplay things like weather advantages in showdowns to maximize, any potential edge that I would have. And yeah, if I saw a 5 to 6 mile an hour difference, again, like that 5 to 6 to 10 to 12, I would 100% like massively shift my exposures to the wave that had the 5 to 6 miles per hour. I would have multiple lineups that had all six from there, plenty that would have five, and probably wouldn't have any lineup that didn't have at least four players from the morning wave. If again, that's how it would end up shaking out.
We're certainly on the same page there. Now let's talk classic contests. And again, this can be difficult to employ, right? Because we've done our research all week, and now all of a sudden, if let's just say, for instance, right? Let's just say that way, if you have this example, if it comes up, we look and we see the wind is way heavier Thursday afternoon than it is Thursday morning, and way heavier Friday morning than it is Friday afternoon. We know for a fact that unless there's a massive storm change, that there's going to be an advantage and likely a stroke or two higher for guys who play Thursday morning. Now we're cutting out potentially half of the player pool, but I think near what people may not see here, right? Obviously, there are going to be some times. I think the PGA Championship, I think it was the Players Championship, where the wave advantage completely shifted
Yeah. Yep.
compared to pre-event expectations, but that's because there was a storm involved. But I will say, if let's just say we have this potential wave advantage Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, right? And uh, I would say the downside is no wave edge materializes and all the golfers play the same. And really, you're not at that big of a disadvantage at that point. But the upside is you get all of your players in your lineups two strokes better than half the field. And that's when it becomes a huge edge. You can get a massive amount of 6 out of 6 lineups through, which is how you ultimately end up winning PGA DFS GPPs.
Absolutely. In that scenario, what I would tend to do is my player pool itself would be very heavily slanted towards the morning wave in your example, Thursday morning players. And I would be over the field on, I don't know, maybe 20 of those players. But I would actually stick in a few lineups that were all Thursday afternoon players. So even though I wouldn't have a lot of exposure to the Thursday afternoon players, generally speaking, I would have some lineups that were very heavily slanted towards those players on the case that we get a storm or the wind forecast shifts at the last minute. And then, because again, this will drive some amount of ownership. It won't drive as much ownership as it should, and therefore it still makes sense, to play over what the field's going to do. But on the chance that it doesn't, then I like to be maximally positioned, to take advantage of that without having a lot of exposure to those players in the alternate wave.
That's a really good way to think about it. For those of you who make multiple lineups, have most of your sets. Again, if this materializes by Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, have most of your sets that maximize the wave advantage. 6 out of 6 golfers from that wave, and then have a few just in case it flips and you have an edge there as well. So, all right, guys, that'll do it for this video. Appreciate you watching. As always, daily plug with Nero's picks and strategies will be up on the site Wednesday morning. Occupy model is already up and running on the site. Projected ownership's in there and will continue to be tweaked. And then our trifecta plays and Wednesday updates with betting market analysis and weather updates will be posted sometimes Wednesday afternoon, early evening. Again, OccupyFantasy.com is as little as $7 per week. You can have access to all of this PGA DFS info. All sports are included. Links are in the description below. So for Nero, I'm Brian. Appreciate everyone listening. Again, if we're trying to get to 2,000 views per video, go ahead and like, subscribe, all free to do so. Drop a comment. Guess what? That's free to do so as well. And you've already watched the end of the video, so you completed 1 out of 4 steps. Go complete the other 3 to help us out, show your support for the channel. So thanks for listening, and good luck at the Cognizant Classic.